Alec is a worthless mage who was fired from the royal party for being a commoner. However, everything changes when he starts training in dungeons to become the strongest magician alive and crack everyone for revenge. The story begins several years ago, when a court magician named Eldus approaches little Alec and asks if he would like to learn magic. After Alec agrees, Eldus teaches him how to focus and convert his mana into fire magic, allowing him to master it in just one day. Afterwards, Eldus continues teaching Alec advanced elemental spells for the next few months until one day, when he suddenly announces that he is leaving and warns little Alec never to become a court magician. Confused, Alec asks him why he taught him magic in the first place, and Eldus reveals that it's because he wanted to repay his late mother's favor. Then he disappears. Years later, Alec grows into a promising adult and enrolls in the Royal Magic Academy of Galdana, eventually becoming a magical genius amongst his peers. One night, he finds out that Eldus graduated from the academy as the valedictorian, but was still banished dishonorably from the court by the brain-dead nobles. Feeling sorry for him, Alec decides to repay his master's kindness by becoming a court magician just like him to change the corrupt nobles' thinking. However, just 4 years after graduating from the academy and becoming one, Alec suddenly gets fired by the repulsive crowned prince, Regulus, because he's a commoner restricted to using only support magic. Shocked, he desperately begs Regulus to give him another chance to prove his usefulness to their party, but the spoiled brat refuses to listen to him. Later that night, Alec studies the features of the dungeon floor that Regulus's party plans to explore next and realizes that they might die if he doesn't go with them. Despite being fired, he still wants to save the prince's life, so he writes a report to guide them and rushes to the palace the next day to warn him. Unfortunately, as he approaches the palace's gates, Regulus's mage blocks his entry to the palace, tears the report to shreds, and sends him away. At this, Alec wanders the streets, devastated that he's wasted the last 4 years chasing a dream his master warned him not to pursue. However, just as he considers opening an OnlyFans as his last resort, he runs into his former classmate, Yora, and greets her. After hearing his predicament, Yora talks about the adventurer party they created years ago, and asks Alec if he'll leave the city to join them. Alec hesitates a little, but eventually, he accepts her offer. The following day, Alec and Yora leave Galdana and travel to the dungeon city. Getting there, they visit the Adventurers Guild to get Alec's dungeon pass so he can explore the more dangerous floors. But the receptionist, Misha, tells them she can't issue the pass unless Alec spends 2 years in the guild. Although disappointed, Alec and Yora cut their losses and visit the second floor of the dungeon their party is working on to get Alec warmed up, only for them to be surrounded by a huge swarm of giant monster bugs. Without hesitating, Yora casts a powerful support spell on Alec, and he swiftly takes down a few of the bugs. Afterwards, they notice the other bugs panicking, so Yora offers to investigate their nest alone because she knows Alec is still holding back his true powers, just as he did back when he was a court magician. At this, Alec suddenly realizes that he no longer has to hide behind the nobles, so he goes all out and destroys a huge chunk of the bugs with his most powerful spell. Unfortunately, just when they thought they were safe, a giant mad worm pops out of the ground and traps Yora in its mouth. Seeing this, Alec immediately realizes that the mad worm's the reason why the bugs were in a panic earlier, but as he considers destroying it, he hesitates because he's scared he'll harm Yora. When she notices this, Yora reminds him that even though he had the strongest attack mage in the academy, she was also still the strongest support mage, so he shouldn't worry about her. With that said, she encloses herself in a defense shield. Then Alec invokes a high-level dragon fire spell and spits roasts the entire worm into shish kebab, ultimately ending the battle. Later on, Yora and Alec visit a pub around the corner to drink and officially welcome Alec to their A-rank party lasting period. After a dramatic speech, Yora takes one sip, gets drunk immediately, and starts trash-talking Alec for nearly roasting her alongside the worm. Knowing Yora, Alec just watches her in admiration as she spews out all sorts of nonsense. But when she falls asleep, he covers her with his coat and continues enjoying himself. Just then, a muscular drunkard named Leviel staggers to his table with an empty whiskey bottle and says nonsense to get Alec to react. When Alec doesn't budge, Leviel gets pissed and tries to slam the bottle on Alec's head, but Alec erects a magic shield to stop the attack. Afterwards, he turns back to take a look at the jerk trolling him, but then Leviel drops a dungeon guild pass on his table to apologize for his rudeness and promises to give it to Alec if he can impress him with his magic in a mock battle. At this, Alec gets a little confused, so he asks Leviel who he truly is, but by that time, Yora wakes up and recognizes Leviel as their guildmaster, which sends chills down Alec's spine. Since his cover's been blown, Leviel grabs Alec and Yora and takes both of them to the guild's underground arena to test Alec's skill. Despite being low on mana, Alec still decides to take up this challenge just to prove to everyone that he's not that worthless. So, with the stage set, Alec draws first blood by attacking Leviel with a Thunderbolt spell, but after dodging, Leviel counterattacks Alec with his Torn spell. Seeing this, Alec realizes that Leviel has the upper hand long range, but the moment he decides to close the distance between them, Leviel enhances his body with the Jet Booster spell and swiftly circles Alec like the Reverse Flash, all just to distract him. When he raises a fist towards Alec's face, Alec blocks it with a magic shield, but despite that, the recoil still sends him crashing hard into the wall behind him. Soon, Alec gets back on his feet, summons his magic blade, and charges at Leviel, making sure to dodge and cancel out any ranged attacks aimed at him. To stop him, Leviel then uses Jet Booster again, but as he closes the gap between them, Alec accurately pinpoints his next attack location and unleashes a devastating Thunderbolt attack there, trapping him. Following this, he dashes straight into Leviel and lands a melee weapon strike on him. But unfortunately, the only damage that the attack does is to Leviel's ego. Despite being impressed by Alec's intelligence, Leviel takes things a little too seriously and summons the strongest artifact in his arsenal, the magic gauntlet Dragoneel, so he can show Alec who's boss. Rather than chickening out of this fight, Alec attacks Leviel with another Thunderbolt magic attack, but Leviel's artifact quickly heals up the damage. Seeing this, Alec realizes he'll be fighting a losing battle if he slows down now, so he charges in again and continues slashing Leviel, all just to inflict enough damage to destroy his gauntlet. At one point, Alec manipulates Leviel into giving him an opening. However, immediately after he lands his final attack, Leviel shakes it off and smashes the ground where he stands. In the end, Alec completely runs out of mana and collapses, but just as Leviel's about to celebrate his victory, another one of Alec's former classmates, a logic-resistant musclehead named Ornest, shows up and calls him out for bullying Alec with his most powerful techniques. Upon realizing that he's been caught, Leviel immediately surrenders the dungeon pass to Alec's colleagues and leaves to get some more booze. Moments later, while Alec recovers in Leviel's office, Yora, Alec, and Ornest all meet to discuss the insane hate Alec endured for the last 4 years at the hands of those disgusting Galdanan nobles. However, as Ornest crashes out on Alec's behalf, Misha rushes into the room and begs Leviel to attend to an emergency, so Leviel leaves both Yora and Ornest inside. Shortly after, Ornest finds out from Yora about all the disgusting restrictions Alec had to obey as a court magician, some of which included babysitting the crown prince, walking around without a weapon, and even hiding his true powers so he doesn't make the inconsolable dimwits look bad. When Yora tells him all the terrible things they said about Alec's support magic, Ornest expresses his shock because he only remembers Alec as a highly efficient frontline battle mage, not a support mage like Yora. So, realizing how intelligent Alec must be to master an entirely different type of magic from the ground up, Ornest becomes so angry at the disrespect that he smashes the beer bottle in his hand, causing Alec to wake up. Thrilled, Yora presents Alec with his dungeon pass and assures him that they'll explore the dungeons once he's fully recovered. However, when Ornest hears this, he tells them to postpone the exploration and instead focus on busting into Galdana's royal court and beating the life out of that annoying Regulus and his party for revenge. Unfortunately, fighting against other parties is prohibited, so Alec tells Ornest that the only way they can truly pay Regulus back is by getting so strong that even Regulus won't be able to ignore them, and Ornest oddly agrees. Meanwhile, Misha and Leviel are seen in another room, dressing the ghastly wounds on a female S-rank adventurer, Krista. Soon after stitching and bandaging her up, Leviel calls together all the available adventurers, except Alec, for a meeting and briefs them on an emergency mission they'll be doing to rescue Krista's fellow S-rank colleagues, who are currently trapped on floor 64 at the Western Dungeon, where healing magic doesn't work. As the meeting continues, yet another former classmate of Alec's, a healer named Krasha, visits Alec and asks him why he's not in Leviel's meeting. When Alec says it's because they still consider him an outsider, Krasha immediately heals his wounds and urges him to open up to her, so she can comfort him with all the natural protein he needs from her mommy milkers. Unfortunately, as Alec pours out his heart to her, Ornest and Yora show up to tell him about their new mission. Along the line, Krasha and Ornest get into their usual banter, but while they fight, Yora tells Alec that they'll be needing his help big time when they get down there because he's still the strongest mage they have. At this point, Alec starts condemning himself because he fears he'll be useless to them, but Yora lets him know that the guildmaster has taken a liking to him, so if they want all the smoke, they need Alec to accept the mission as extras, or else the guildmaster and his party will outshine them. With this, Alec quickly accepts the mission, and almost immediately, they all set off to the western dungeon to start it. At the dungeon's entrance, Alec and his new party members, Krasha, Ornest, and the team leader, Yora, pause to cook up an efficient strategy to rescue Krista's colleagues. Since they can't afford to waste any more time, Yora takes out the blue, glowing teleportation dungeon core that Leviel gave her earlier and assures the team that it can send them straight to the 64th floor. Thereafter, she tells Alec to work on conserving his strength for the undead floor boss, and then teleports the entire party directly to the 64th floor. Getting there, they run into a small army of undead skeleton soldiers. But to conserve Alec's strength for the floor boss, Ornest whips out his artifact, which is a black legendary spear, and works with Yorha's support magic to crush as many skeletons as he can within the time limit. While he's at it, Alec continues exploring the floor, when suddenly, he feels some invisible presence sneaking up to him from behind, and immediately attacks it with a thunderbolt spell. When nothing happens for the next few seconds, Alec tells his colleagues that he might have been imagining things, but then a Grim Reaper's silhouette suddenly appears, and Alec instantly attacks it with his magic blade. At that point, Ornest and the others reveal that they actually knew about the Grim Reaper, but wanted Alec to spot it by himself to test if he's still as strong as he was back then. Although Alec gets a little salty about their cunning test, he postpones his crash out and slices the entire creature in half in one strike. Afterwards, a larger army of undead skeleton soldiers surrounds the four of them, but rather than getting scared, Alec and Ornest receive Yorha's support spell boosts and attack. Soon after crushing a few skeletons, Alec gets all his party members behind him. Then he unleashes a wide-range thunderbolt attack and levels the entire army in seconds. In the aftermath of the attack, Ornest asks Alec why he's always casting thunderbolt when they both know that he has stronger spells, and Alec nervously tells him that it's the fastest to activate. Judging by the look on his face, Ornest knows he's lying, but as he tries getting him to spill the truth, a huge tremor shakes the entire floor, and Alec's party immediately realizes that they're near the floor boss's room. With time running out, Yorha enhances Ornest's body with speed magic and has him bolt forward to the boss room, so they can follow up. However, upon getting there, they find a huge reptilian monster they mistake for the floor boss chasing after one of Krista's party members, a crooked support mage named Loki, and chill out to watch the show. The moment Loki sees them around, he begs them to help him. But Ornest and Krasha advise Alec to let him be because the guy's better off as human mashed potatoes. Just then, Loki suddenly trips and falls, but as the monster closes in on him, it steps on a bunch of magical trap spells he's set in advance, and is impaled by several fire pillar blades, which pin it down. Rather than running away, the useless son of a gun starts trash-talking the monster for being dumb and falling for the same trap twice. Before long, the angry monster shoots a tailed beast bomb at Loki. But luckily for him, Ornest carries his useless self away from the line of fire before the attack hits him. Following that, Alec, Krasha, and Yorha all jump in to defeat the reptilian monster, but the monster ignores them and chases after Loki and Ornest instead. Seeing this, Alec strikes the monster with a large thunderbolt attack to stop it, but when that doesn't work, Ornest turns back, runs under the monster, confusing it, and throws Loki back to Krasha. Afterward, Yorha instructs Krasha to take Loki to higher ground, while the rest of them stay back and fight the monster. The moment Krasha gets the crook to safety, Yora casts several support spells to increase Alec and Ornest's strength, speed, stamina, flexibility, and dexterity, and then has both of them go all out on the monster. At first, Ornest charges at the monster to land melee damage, but the moment the monster smacks him off its body, Yorha immediately erects a defensive barrier to protect him while he recovers. With Loki sightseeing the entire battle, Alec spends a few minutes invoking an incantation that conjures several magic circles around the monster's body. While he's at it, Ornest recovers, gets back on the monster, and stabs it in the tail to buy Alec time to finish his spell. By the time Alec's done conjuring all the circles, he unleashes an advanced thunderbolt magic attack that electrocutes it for a little while. Unfortunately, just as he's about to deliver the fatal thunderbolt attack, the monster dodges it and opens its mouth to create another tailed beast bomb. With time running out, Krasha shoots an arrow rain spell at the monster, Yorha binds it with strong magic chains, and Ornest sinks his spear into the monster's face, all to trap and hold it down. However, as Alec creates a four-directional seal to fully hold it in place for his final spell, the monster suddenly opens its mouth to create yet another tailed beast bomb. This time around, Alec remains calm and decides to farm more aura by using the very special spell his genius teacher, Master Eldis, passed down to him years ago, Reflect. Once the monster releases its tailed bomb attack, Alec uses Reflect to ricochet the entire bomb back to the monster, and the resulting explosion weakens it even further. Seeing this, Alec roasts it even further with a higher tier fire spell called Helios, and has Ornest split its head in half with his spear, ultimately defeating it. With the monster gone, Alec and his party members celebrate their very big win, but just when they thought they were out of the woods, Loki shows up and tells them that there's a tougher floor boss somewhere that his colleagues are still stuck fighting. Confused, Alec and his party urge him to tell them about this tougher floor boss, and after beating around the bush, Loki tells them that it's a terrifying undead knight with red eyes, clad head to toe in black armor with nothing inside. Although physical attacks can't do much against the monster, Loki surprisingly gives Alec an artifact that transforms into a legendary sword named Schwart, telling him that he wants him to use it when fighting the tougher floor boss. At this, Ornest and Yora ask Loki why he's giving Alec something that'll turn him into a frontline fighter, and Loki says it's because he doesn't want Alec to fight the other boss with magic. When they ask him why, he just spouts some nonsense about launching a surprise attack and fooling his friends, which confuses them even further. Meanwhile, Regulus and his party members are seen on the 30th floor of the Galdanan dungeon, desperately running from two giant bug monsters chasing them. Since they're out of magic, like Alec predicted, Regulus decides to attack the monsters with his plastic sword, but the monsters easily knock his weak, pathetic body out, leaving him half-conscious. As he gets his butt hauled back to the palace, Regulus realizes that his body has been getting a lot weaker ever since he fired Alec. But rather than accepting his mistake, the idiot avoids accountability like the plague and concludes that Alec must have cursed him to get revenge. When he arrives at the palace, Regulus gets his wounds dressed and has his aide, a fellow noble named Vogan, magically scan his entire body for curses. When Vogan assures him that there are no curses, the annoying little twerp refuses to believe, and instead, he continues blaming Alec for his losses. The moment he starts talking about their expedition, Vogan remembers that Alec once tried to warn them about the 30th floor's anti-magic field and tells Regulus, but since his mage already tore the report, Regulus continues yapping. Before long, a servant shows up and summons Regulus to the throne room to discuss Alec with his father, the current king. Regulus happily rushes to the throne room, thinking his dad was going to punish Alec, but upon getting there, his dad asks him if he knows Eldaz, a court magician he once banished, and he becomes seriously confused. To enlighten Regulus, the king tells him that Eldaz used to be a brilliant noble mage, until one day, when he developed the balls to order him, the king, to treat court magicians with more respect, or watch his kingdom burn down in the near future. At the time, the king was an airhead just like the other nobles, so rather than listening to Eldaz's warnings, he stripped him of his nobility and sent him away. Despite that, Eldaz attended the magical academy as a commoner, rose to be the valedictorian using his pure skills, and came back as a court magician to warn the king a few more times before disappearing from the court a year later. Since then, the king says he's been so worried that Eldaz might be right that he sent Regulus and his party to explore the dungeon and prove that Eldaz's warnings were false. Well, now that he's realized just how true the warnings were, the king declares right then and there that they'll be changing their policy of discrimination against commoners and ensure they hire those with talent, like Alec. Hearing this, Regulus's world comes crashing down, but as he desperately tries to change his father's mind, the servant from earlier brings him a tray filled with neatly arranged pieces of Alec's report, the one Lenny tore earlier, and presents them to him. At first, Regulus thought the torn paper was filled with jargon. However, when Vogan tells him that the torn sheets contain the report Alec wrote down, detailing how to clear the 30th floor, Regulus excuses himself and crashes out in the corridor, as he finally realizes that he's been the dumb one all along for thinking Alec was useless. Back at the Western Dungeon, Alec and his party continue poking Loki to tell them why he doesn't want Alec to use magic. Eventually, he says it's because the second boss monster is an intelligent martial arts expert, and that he just wants Alec to trick the monster into thinking he's an ordinary swordsman, so it'll make it easier to finish it off with a flashy magic spell. Having said all that, he then turns to Krasia and tells her to help him tweak a top-secret teleportation spell he stole from the government. Although it's highly illegal to do that, Loki assures them that they won't be caught, and so she ultimately decides to work with him. Not long after, Krasia and Loki finally manage to set up the teleportation magic circle that takes all 5 of them straight to the other floor boss's space. Getting there, they find 2 of Krista's colleagues, Rywell and Marbell, fighting the other floor boss. Ornest immediately charges at it to distract it so Alec can land a surprise attack from behind, but the floor boss easily sees through their plans. While Krasia and Loki take Rywell and Marbell to safety, Alec and Ornest work together till they finally manage to pin the monster down and slice its head clean off. However, just when they thought they were safe, the headless monster evolves into a Dullahan and becomes even faster with its attacks. Seeing this, Yora enhances Ornest with a twofold support spell, and Ornest lunges at the monster to hold it down. Within seconds, Alec lands another strike with the sword Loki gave him and sends it crashing into the wall behind it. Despite that, the monster still gets back up, reattaches its head, and continues the attack. It throws Alec into a wall, but luckily for him, before his entire vertebrae get crushed, Yora erects a defense barrier that saves him. Following this, Alec asks Loki how much he needs to finish his plans, and Loki tells him to buy him 5 more minutes. At this, he takes a healing potion and joins Ornest to continue stalling the monster, while Yora, Krasha, and Loki keep cooking up their master plan. As the battle ensues, Ornest finally welcomes Alec from the land of the dead, and Alec gets a little surprised. As it turns out, ever since Alec came to the city, he's been acting a little strange, almost as if he were still a court magician. But now that he's getting more into his old self, Ornest is glad to have his old buddy back. After a heartfelt yap session between them, the monster catches up to Alec and raises its sword to end him. However, as it's about to strike him, Loki finishes his spell and casts a large purple magic circle above the monster's head, trapping it. Seeing this, the monster swooshes towards Loki and slashes him in the belly, only to realize that he was just an illusion. Now that the monster is fully trapped, Loki appears alongside Krasha, Rywell, and Marbell on a huge wall above the floor boss, and slows it down by trapping its leg in ice magic. At this, Ornest lunges forward, unintentionally stepping into Krasha's teleportation magic circle, and teleports directly behind the floor boss. After Ornest lands a devastating attack on the monster, Marble descends from the wall and tries to land the finishing blow, but the monster dodges to the right, only to get trapped again with ice magic. Irritated, the floor boss climbs up the wall and attacks where the real, currently invisible Loki really is. As the real Loki blocks the attack with his magic blade, Yora conjures a 7-fold physical enhancement spell on him to keep him strong. But when the monster continues overpowering him, she invokes a complex sealing technique called the 3-point seal to hold it down. However, right before the seal completely engulfs the monster, it pushes Loki off the wall. As he free falls into Marbell's hands, Loki hands the fight over to Alec, and almost instantly, Alec conjures several yellow magic circles all over the boss monster in preparation for another massive thunderbolt spell. Given how draining the spell is, this one takes a toll on his body. So after unleashing his first mass thunderbolt attack on the boss monster shakes it off and slowly starts breaking out of Yora's sealing chains. With time running out, Alec has an anime epiphany and uses the power of friendship to somehow push past his body's fatigue. Then, he merges his magic circles into one, summons the lightning god, Vajra, which wows every onlooker present, and vaporizes the floor boss just as it breaks free of Yora's seal. With the monster gone, Alec collapses and wakes up outside the dungeon an hour later alongside his party members. After an excruciating 5 minutes of yap and banters, Ornest urges Alec to trust them with his woes more often instead of bottling them all up inside, and Alec starts shedding tears of joy. Before long, Loki, Rywell, and Marbell all show up and thank Alec and his buddies for rescuing them. After that, Rywell introduces himself as the leader of their S-rank party, Recromo, while Marbell straight up flirts with Alec to catch him while he's fresh and untouched. Seeing this, Yora immediately gets jealous, but while she warns Marbell to keep Alec's name out of her effing mouth, Loki and Rywell promise to recommend a promotion for Alec's party, the lasting period, from A to S rank to repay them for their help. That being said, Alec harvests the dungeon core to the floor boss's space, exchanges handshakes with Rywell one more time, and bids each other farewell as they successfully clear the 64th dungeon boss. Not long after, Alec visits the guild and collects his fat payment for the mission, but on his way out, Leviel tells him that a creepy man named Vogan, who came all the way from Galdana, is waiting for him in the waiting room. Confused, Alec walks to the room and greets Vogan politely, but rather than responding to his greetings, Vogan scolds him for not teaching the spoiled Regulus how weak he is. In his defense, Alec tells him Regulus never listens to him, but even still, Vogan refuses to understand, simply because he's just sick and tired of babysitting that stupid brat all day long. Eventually, he tells Alec about Regulus's expedition and the results, and then adds that the brat is currently there waiting for him at the underground arena to have one final discussion with him to clear things out. Hearing this, Alec immediately follows Vogan underground to iron things out with the little twerp, and on the way there, the duo discusses the terrible, prideful lives the useless nobles live in their little bubbles. When they get to the arena, Regulus immediately tells Alec about his father's decision to change the kingdom's policies towards commoners and starts crashing out really badly over how ridiculous that sounds. To the inexperienced idiot, a world where a noble like him listens to a mere commoner like Alec isn't a world worth living in. So to fully vent out his frustration, he grabs Alec by his collar and condemns him for not understanding how he currently feels. Seeing this, Alec doesn't even try to pretend like he understands Regulus. Instead, he not only tells him that his mindset is completely wrong, but he also assures him that things would have been different if he listened to him earlier. Despite knowing Alec's right, Regulus still refuses to accept the truth, because as soon as he gets all of Alec's attention, he draws his legendary twin daggers and challenges Alec to a battle, hoping to beat him and prove to his father that commoners don't need any rights. With the stage set, Regulus charges at Alec with murderous intent, but Alec easily evades all his attacks and sends the dimwit tripping and falling like a klutz. While he recovers, Alec then asks Vogan if he's the one who put Regulus up to this, and Vogan affirms that he did that because Regulus needed a harsh reality check to understand that the world doesn't always revolve around him. With that being said, Regulus then gets back on his feet and continues attacking Alec, but Alec still dodges and deflects all of his attacks like a piece of cake. At one point, Regulus gets desperate and launches one of his most powerful attacks, only for Alec to block it again using low-level support magic. Upon seeing how effective Alec's support spell is, Regulus finally admits that he must have been the one keeping him safe behind the scenes all those times when he magically survived the terrible floor monsters. Additionally, Regulus also admits that after firing him, he repeatedly tried to conquer the 30th floor on his own, but was defeated every single time. And this made him so mad, especially after realizing Alec's report was accurate, that he made it his life's mission to cut him down. Now that he finally has his chance, he rage baits Alec and dares him to fight him seriously if he can. Refusing to accept the insults, Alec grants Regulus his wish and draws his legendary blade. However, before fighting the brat, he heaves a sigh of relief, happy that his 4 years of enduring insults and being called worthless didn't go to waste, and then charges at the stupid boy with full speed. Regulus just crouches, waiting for Alec to finish him off, but when Alec intentionally refuses to murder him, he gets mad again and desperately tries a second time to get him to attack him. At this point, Alec realizes that the little guy, who's been taught by his stupid father his entire life to hate commoners, is just confused about what to do moving forward because hating commoners is all he's ever known. Apparently, Regulus initially planned to have Alec murder him so that he could force his father to reconsider his decision. But now that his plan has failed, he cries really badly because he now realizes that he needs to be a better person. After his crash out, Regulus asks Alec what he thinks he should do moving forward, but Alec just keeps on yapping until Regulus swallows his pride and apologizes for everything. Touched by his sudden humility, Alec finally responds to Regulus's original question by telling him about everyone who's helped in the past, Eldis, Yora, and his party members, and then urging him to find his path for himself. Hearing this, Regulus finally matures and politely tries to reinstate him as the palace's court magician. But to their surprise, Alec rejects the offer, telling Vogan and Regulus that he loves his new party members. After Alec tells him to thank the king for the last 4 years when he gets back, Regulus yaps a few more times and finally parts ways with Alec as friends. The next morning, Alec meets with his party members and asks if any of them is available to give him a tour of the entire city. For some weird reason, Ornest and Krasha, who initially told him they were free, suddenly opted out of helping him, forcing poor Alec to choose Yora as his tour guide. Yora gets a little sheepish at first, even asking Alec if he'd like to postpone the tour, but when Alec assures her that he's fine with just 2 of them, she gets red all over and eventually agrees to be his guide. Moments later, Yora takes Alec to the adventurer's market, where varieties of weapons, armor, potions, and different items are being sold, and nearly gets scammed by a shady merchant. Thankfully, Alec drags her away just in time, and they continue their stroll around the market square. After some more small talk, Alec takes Yora to a cafe for a tea break, and asks why Ornest and Krasha hate Loki that much. Long story short, Yora explains that it's because Loki nonchalantly threw away Ornest's former spear right after a dangerous dungeon raid from 2 years ago, all while Ornest was passed out and unable to move. When Ornest woke up that day, he got really upset and has been beefing with Loki ever since. As for Krasha, Yora says she just hates Loki because she knows he's never up to any good, which Alec can relate to. After their tea break, the duo continues their stroll, reminiscing on their old academy days in Galdana, until Yora stumbles upon an ultra-rare accessory called the Elven Ribbon at a random merchant's shop, and starts freaking out. When Alec asks what it's used for, she says it increases one's magic power by a lot. But unfortunately, since she's a brokey like you, she can't afford the $50k price tag. Feeling sorry for her, Alec pays for the ribbon without batting an eye and assures Yora that she can have it. At this, Yora beams brightly with a blush and thanks Alec for helping her, as the duo spends the rest of the day exploring the beautiful parts of the city. Later that evening, Yora takes Alec to the city's bell tower, and there, Alec gets to sightsee various important buildings in the city. After taking in the amazing views the city has to give, Alec starts yapping about how free and alive this city makes him feel, and Yora, who feels oddly sad for a reason, asks Alec if he's really happy to be on their team. Apparently, she feels that she took advantage of Alec's vulnerable state back when he lost his old job and forced him to join lasting period. However, when Alec assures her that he's more than happy getting stronger with 3 of his best pals, Yora becomes so happy that she sheds a few tears of joy. After some more small talk, Alec tells Yora he wants to express his true feelings about something, and Yora, thinking bro's about to sweep her off her feet, closes her eyes and leans in for a kiss. However, at the last second, Alec starts yapping about a spar he had and lost with Ornus not long ago, and Yora's left severely embarrassed by how stupid this anime's screenwriters just made her feel. The following morning, Ornus wakes Alec up and forces him into an early morning wooden sword spar in their house's training yard, while Crassia trains archery and Yora watches them. After a painstakingly long 10 minutes of fighting, Ornus wins the duel as he breaks Alec's wooden sword. But just as they're about to begin round 2 with real weapons, Loki, Rywell, and Krista show up to deliver lasting period's S-rank identification card on behalf of Leviel, the guildmaster. Upon making the delivery, Yora and the others jump for joy, while Krista pulls Alec to the side and tells him that his party can now explore an even higher difficulty dungeon, called the Arcana Dungeon. Not only that, but she also adds that if Alec's party ever runs into trouble, they can always rely on the Rechroma S-rank party to call for help. Happy to hear this, Alec thanks her dearly for the help, but to celebrate their big W, he and his party members trick Loki into sponsoring a big feast for all of them at the diner inside the guild building. Once the celebration begins, Loki painfully watches as Alec and his freeloading colleagues order the most expensive items on the diner's menu, eating and drinking for hours until their bellies nearly burst. At one point, Loki tries begging them to take it easy on his wallet, so he doesn't go bankrupt, but they ignored his pleas because they know he's basically a miser and a walking cash machine. By nightfall, Alec carries a super drunk, half-conscious Yora on his back and chit-chats with Krasha and Ornest about Yora's happy feelings, especially after finding out that Alec chose their party over being a court magician. Unfortunately, as they're about to leave for their home, Misha shows up and urges Krasha to return to the guild, so she can help them heal up some wounded adventurers, as they're out of healers for everyone. Naturally, Krasha rushes back in and does the needful, but right after healing a batch of wounded people, she asks Misha why there are so many wounded adventurers at the guild that night, and Misha says it's because they were all attacked by a group of criminals who target and attack adventurers, the Shadow Guild. Unfortunately, before they can discuss any further, Leviel shows up and brings Krasha to his room to heal up a prominent S-rank swordswoman nicknamed Olivia the Nameless, who the Shadow Guild also attack. However, just as Krasha's about to begin the healing process, Olivia wakes up and rudely asks where she is. After telling her, Krasha then asks if she can remember what happened to her, but then Olivia suddenly starts cursing the scumbag who betrayed their squad. When she runs out of steam, she rudely tells Krasha to heal her quickly so she can find the traitor, but when Krasha refuses to do that, Olivia grabs her milk jugs and trash talks her, only to pass out shortly after. At this, Krasha examines Olivia's body and heals her throughout the night. The next morning, Alec visits the public library to read up on the Arcana Dungeon, but while he's at it, he meets a weird boy named Luorg, who demands that he buy him some parfait, and gets a boatload of parfait for him. While Luorg enjoys the treats, he further introduces himself as a member of Olivia's S-rank party, Nameless, and then mentions that he's there to observe the person who made Lasting Period's recent promotion to S-rank possible. Although confused, Alec asks what he's noticed so far, and Luorg says that he's noticed that Alec's the best guy to fit that hole. Following this, he then asks Alec if he has any interest in joining them for a raid on the Labyrinth dungeon, and Alec gets a little shocked. Meanwhile, Krasha visits Olivia's room to check up on her, but when she finds her practicing swings in front of Leviel, she crashes out at him. Leviel gives an excuse and tries one more time to find out more about the attack. However, when Olivia still refuses to budge, Krasha chases him out, so she'll continue healing Olivia. While changing her bandages, Krasha tells Olivia about herself, and Olivia, realizing just how simplistic Krasha is, apologizes for being a jerk to her earlier. In return, Krasha kisses her forehead, which creeps Olivia enough to ask why. When Krasha tells her it's a gimmick, Olivia instantly recalls how her mom used to do the same thing to her young self. Eventually, she snaps out of it and asks Krasha for some tea, but the moment Krasha brings it, she drugs it behind her back. A few hours later, Alec meets with Yora and Ornest to share his meeting with Lorg. After hearing these details, Ornest and Yora tell him that Lorg is an elf who is older than all of them combined, and that his party, Nameless, is currently working on the southwestern dungeon known as the Labyrinth. When they ask Alec about any details Lorg might have shared, he says that Lorg mentioned they were heading for the 72nd floor, the second to last floor, hoping to clear it and the final floor to obtain their teleportation cores. Not only that, but it turns out that Lorg also gave Alec and his party permission to take the cores for themselves if they're able to defeat the Labyrinth dungeon. At the time, Alec says he asked Lorg why he'd want them to have such valuable materials, and that Lorg said he wanted to focus on taking out the Shadow Guild to avenge Olivia, without having to worry about the dungeon too much. That said, Alec says Lorg then dropped the core to floor 72, and left him to think about the raid request. Having heard everything Alec just said, Ornest suspects Lorg is setting them up. Unfortunately, since they really don't have time to think deeply, Ornest collects floor 72's core, urges them to take the mission nonetheless, and then advises they go check up on Krasha at the guild first. However, when they get to the entrance, Misha runs up to them and tells them Krasha's in trouble. Without hesitation, Alec and the others rush into the infirmary and find Krasha walking groggily along the corridor's walls. After holding her up, Yora asks her why she's like that, and Krasha says Olivia drugged her so she can return to the labyrinth to continue fighting. Hearing this, Ornest, who couldn't care less about that rude swordswoman, basically tells Krasha that Olivia isn't their problem since she's so strong and independent. However, since Miss Goody Two-Shoes needs this episode to run a little longer, she spouts some nonsense about the traitor who betrayed Olivia, and ultimately manipulates the rest, including Ornest, to accompany her to the southwestern labyrinth dungeon. At the labyrinth's entrance, Marble pops up out of nowhere and latches her portable melons to Alec's arm. Confused, Yora immediately asks why she's there with them, and Marble says it's because Lorg previously asked her to join the raid with Nameless and Lasting Period, even though she's from Rechroma. That said, there's a brief silence, but when Marble starts getting touchy-feely with Alec, Yora nearly explodes with jealousy. Thankfully, before his rocket launcher reacts to Marble's pheromones, Yora separates both of them and instantly fires Marble on the spot, claiming she'd rather go with Lasting Period's dynamic than adopt the terrible teamwork of the Nameless party. Although Marble doesn't complain, she assures them that Olivia is a good person, despite what others might think about her, and Alec and Yora choose to believe her. Satisfied, Marble begs them one more time to save Olivia, and then returns to the guild to update Levio. Soon after, Ornest gives Alec a special tracking bracelet, a Mobius ring, to wear, and right after, they teleport straight down to the 72nd floor. There, Krasha sets down several teleportation circles in random locations on that floor, so that they'll all be able to reconnect even if a trap splits them up. While she's at it, Ornest starts rage-baiting her with his loud mouth, and out of anger, Krasha kicks him into a teleportation trap. As the trap activates, Alec immediately rushes towards Ornest to save him, but along the way, he also steps into another teleportation trap, which teleports him to the midst of a monster army. There, Alec gets attacked from all sides, but as he destroys some with his Thunderbolt spell, Krasha shows up after tracking the bracelet on him and helps him shoot down the rest. Afterwards, they chat a little bit and get into another fight where Krasha showcases her sword skills and takes down more enemies than Alec. On their way to the floor boss's room, Alec spots Olivia's bandages littering the ground and figures she's nearby. Meanwhile, Ornest and Yora are seen running from a huge army of orcs and undead monsters after foolish Ornest opened a trap door. At one point, Yora erects a large enough earth wall to keep them above the army. Right after, she then sends Ornest down, fortified with enough support spells, and has him figure out and behead the monster army commander. Once that happens, the stragglers run away, and the duo keeps on walking till they find a floor boss's corpse, which was murdered with a one-sword strike. Confused, Yora wonders who could pull such an insane move, and Ornest tells her that it's no doubt the legendary Blade Master, Melia, who's rumored to be the only solo S-rank party. Meanwhile, Melia is seen in another part of the dungeon, speaking to the leader of the Shadow Guild, Gloria, who asks him why he's betraying Olivia and the rest of the Nameless clan. After aura farming for a few seconds, Melia says it's basically because he wants to get much stronger than he already is. However, as Gloria is about to respond, his minions show up to inform him about the intruders they spotted on floor 72, and he permits them to destroy them. Not long after, Krasha and Alec find Olivia wounded and sitting in a room, so they pause to talk to her, but Olivia doesn't budge. Instead, she orders Krasha to heal her wounds, so she can continue fighting, but Krasha refuses because she knows she'll try to run away. By then, Alec tries talking some sense into her head, so she'll know that Krasha actually cares about her, but Olivia just ignores him and walks towards a teleportation circle. At this, Krasha has Alec stop her, and then asks why she's so hellbent on finding this traitor. In response, Olivia says it's because she wants to murder the traitor who taught her what she knows, let her mother die, and nearly murdered her earlier, Malaya. That said, Olivia briskly walks into the teleportation circle, with Alec and Krasha following her, and together, all of them get teleported to a nest filled with various monsters. Without hesitation, Alec lunges at the monsters, destroying anything his blade touches. At the same time, Krasha quickly heals Olivia's wounds, so Olivia can join the fight and buy her enough time to create the teleportation magic circle that'll take them out of that nest. After Olivia joins the fight, she skillfully saves Alec from getting his butt whooped by a monster, and this leaves him shocked by how high level her skills are. As he's about to continue fighting, Krasha's magic suddenly stops flowing into the teleportation magic circle she was creating, and Alec fears that there might be a monster casting the magic eater spell around them. Considering their situation, Olivia gets even more serious with her strikes, and Alec also ups his skills, so she won't underestimate him. Seconds later, as they continue slashing down monsters, Olivia notices Alec's impressive swordsmanship, so she compliments him for not being that bad, and gives him useful advice to get better at using the sword. Before long, the duo realizes that they need to find the Magic Eater's caster to end this battle quickly, so Olivia tells Alec to keep the monsters, while she asks Krasha if she knows where the Magic Eater's caster is. Once Krasha points to the direction it's at, Olivia glides through the rear lines, slashing whatever monster is blocking her path, and Alec works on destroying as many monsters as he can to keep them away from Olivia. With this strategy, Olivia swiftly gets to the Magic Eater caster's location, where she finds it ringing a bell and stabs it in the chest before destroying the bell. With the Magic Eater caster dead, Krasha continues creating the teleportation magic circle, and Alec easily Pikachus the stronger monsters with his 5-fold Thunderbolt spell. Within the next few seconds, Krasha finishes the teleportation magic circle and immediately hurries Olivia and Alec to get within range before the other monsters get to them. Once they get on the circle, Krasha teleports all three of them to another part of the dungeon, and there, Olivia thanks Alec for the immense help back there. After Alec accepts her gratitude, Krasha, on the other hand, complains that Olivia fighting with a body that's still healing is going to cause her wounds to reopen, which will make things much worse. With Olivia remaining silent, Krasha then talks about the traitor she kept yapping about in her sleep the other night, and Olivia decides to tell them her backstory, so they understand why she hates this person so much. Apparently, Olivia's mom died while she was very little, but at the time, Malaya the Blade Master took her in and taught her every single sword technique she currently knows. Back then, Olivia says she admired and respected the scumbag because he pretended to care about her, not knowing that he was the one who murdered her mother in the first place. During one of her recent dungeon raids with Malaya, Olivia took down some monsters as usual, but this time around, right after she was done destroying them, Malaya slashed her in the back, betraying her in the worst way possible, and confessed his sin of murdering her mother before leaving her. Ever since, Olivia says she investigated his claims till she found proof that he really did it and felt like trash because she stupidly looked up to the man who made her life worthless. That said, she then shows both Alec and Krasha the terrible scar her master's attack left on her back, but Alec covers the scar and urges her never to forget her friends, Lorg and Marbel, who were willing to go out of their way to help with her revenge. Hearing this, Olivia tells Alec and Krasha that Lorg and Marbel might be determined, but the Melier she knows is a terrifying master swordsman who won't hesitate to end anyone in his way. Even still, Alec and Krasha volunteer to fight the scoundrel side by side with her. Elsewhere, Ornest and Yora walk through the corridor, yapping about all the nonsense that's been happening to them so far, when suddenly, Ornest hears something creeping around the corner. Before long, they run into Gloria's henchmen, who happen to be chowing down dungeon cores, and trash-talk them for being nutjobs who enjoy eating crystals. After the small talk, the ringleader and his lackeys lunge at Ornest and Yora, but Yora easily captures and binds them with her sealing spell. Following that, they interrogate the ringleader to expose why they're there, and the idiot reveals that their bosses told them to steal the dungeon cores of the 72nd and 73rd floors. Satisfied with the response, Yorha then tightens the chains around his neck and asks about their relationship with Melia. But after hearing the ringleader spout nonsense, Ornest and Yorha conclude that they're dealing with small fries. Unfortunately, just as they're about to leave to reunite with Alec and the others, the ringleader casts a magic spell that creates a massive sinkhole in the dungeon ground. Then he captures Yora and runs back to his master, while he happily screams that he's gotten what he came for. Ornest tries to stop him, but unfortunately, the idiot's just too fast, so he follows him down to floor 73, Meanwhile, Alec and Olivia chat about Alec's childhood as an astute magic user, and also his life as a court magician, when they suddenly feel the same tremor nearby. Curious, they rush to the room where the sinkhole appeared, and find Yora's beret there. Around that same time, the ringleader finally returns to Gloria's lair on the 73rd floor with Yora, and presents her to him. After Yora wakes up, she interrogates Gloria to find out who he really is, and why they're kidnapping her. But the scoundrel refuses to divulge any information about himself. Instead, he continues rage-baiting her until Melia shows up in all his eminence and tells him to stop. Just as Gloria is about to continue yapping, Ornus drops from the ceiling, stabs the ringleader from earlier, and clashes swords with Gloria. Seconds later, as the ringleader gets back on his feet, Ornus demands some answers from all of them, but then the ringleader knocks Yora out and runs away with Melia to the lowest point of the 73rd floor to get the dungeon core. Ornus tries to follow them again, but then Gloria blocks him and fights him. After just a few clanks, Ornus breaks Gloria's mana sword and runs his spear right through his stomach. The resulting pain causes Gloria to lose a massive amount of blood, but for some weird reason, he doesn't die. Instead, he gets up screaming like a terrible Halloween project in a pool of his own blood, sells his soul to a demon he worships, reabsorbs all his blood, and restores himself and his sword. As they begin round 2 of their battle, Ornus trash-talks him for a few seconds and easily stabs Gloria again. As expected, Gloria reabsorbs all the blood from the stab wound, just like the first time, and transforms it into a stronger mana blade. Right before his next attack, he reveals to Ornus that selling his soul earlier granted him a special demonic magic called Burning Blood, which allows him to manipulate and transform all the blood that flows from his battle wounds into weapons or powerful spells. Having said all that, he then unleashes a heavy air-slash-attack on Ornus, but Ornus easily dodges it. Seeing this, Gloria continues launching several consecutive heavy air slashes, some of which injure Ornus. However, the moment Ornus thinks about retreating from the battle, Gloria conjures a magic whip, grabs him by the leg, and slams him to the ground to stop him. At this, Gloria starts trash-talking, as he thinks Ornus is as good as dead, but unfortunately for him, Ornus gets less than a minute after getting slammed, summons his legendary spear, and sticks it into the wall behind Gloria to distract him. Within seconds, he closes the gap between himself and the assailant and knocks him out with a sucker punch to his ugly face. While Gloria recovers, Ornus remembers one of the mock battles he had with Alec during their academy days 6 years ago. On that very day, Alec and Ornus talked big as usual, but when the battle began, Ornus got overwhelmed by Alec's genius magic blade and accidentally threw his spear dangerously close to their principal, Rosie's face. Later that evening, as they serve their punishment, Alec concedes defeat, citing that Ornus made himself an opening by distracting the caster, and Ornus accepts the W for the day. Given how weird it was to be remembering a memory like that amid a fight, Ornus snaps out of it quickly and continues slamming his fists into Gloria's face. Then, once he's had enough, he knocks Gloria down one more time with yet another sucker punch and tells him that he's going to continuously beat the crap out of him until he stops breathing, so he won't even have time to bleed at all. Not long after, Gloria gets back on his feet yet again, but this time, he stabs himself with his twin blood daggers and uses the blood oozing out to invoke an ultra-high-level demonic attack spell that makes Ornus freeze in immense fear and shock. In the meantime, Leviel and Luorg are seen eating and drinking at the guild building's diner as they discuss Alec's rumored ability to use all 5 forms of elemental magic. However, while they're at it, Marbell suddenly interrupts them and tells them that Olivia ran back to the labyrinth to continue fighting. Now, before they get worried, she adds that Alec and his buddies have gone after her. But even still, Leviel fears that these Nimrods will ruin his plans to wait for the right moment to ambush the Shadow Guild. So, to prevent that from happening, he finishes his drink and storms outside the building to get to the labyrinth. Outside, he pauses and asks Marbell if she thinks Alec can use offensive spells other than fire and lightning magic. When Marbell assures him that fire and lightning are the only elements she has seen Alec use, Luorg becomes slightly disappointed that the rumors he heard about Alec wielding all 5 elements were false. As they continue racing towards the labyrinth, Alec appears right in front of Ornus with the best possible timing, and quickly uses the reflect spell to ricochet Gloria's fire magic attack back to him. Afterward, Krasha and Olivia join them and ask if they're sure that the reflect attack took Gloria out. Unfortunately, just when they thought it did, Gloria pops out of his own flames, tears off a piece of his burnt skin, and gathers more mana for his next spell. Meanwhile, Ornus tells Alec and the girls that the creep from earlier and Melia grabbed Yora from him, almost as if she were the one they were looking for, and ran off with her to an undisclosed location. Although Ornest doesn't really know much about their plans, he assures them all that these criminals are after Floor 73's dungeon core. Hearing this, Krasha heals him, grabs his Mobius ring, and tells Alec and Ornest to keep Gloria busy while she and Olivia push forward to rescue Yora. Before long, Gloria attacks them with fire spells again, but Alec reflects the attacks, making sure to create smoke around the space, and then has Krasha and Olivia sneak in behind the smoke so they can continue pushing Melia and the ringleader. Soon after watching Krasha and Olivia leave, Gloria gives up his entire life force to his demon, Zorg, gets reborn as a super fast and rabid beast, and then bites Ornest in the shoulder all within a split second. Confused, Alec attacks him with his lightning-fast Thunderbolt spell, but when Gloria dodges all of them, he switches tactics and uses his wide-range thunder spell, Karavnos, to try to shock Gloria to death. Unfortunately, even that doesn't work, because immediately, Alec stops the attack. Gloria transforms his blood into twin swords, and continuously attacks Alec with his air slash until Alec's defense shield breaks. Just then, Ornest appears behind him to land a sneak attack, but Gloria counters and continues overwhelming him with a barrage of sucker punches and kicks till Ornest passes out. Following his attack, Gloria then makes the mistake of distracting himself again, so within this time, Ornest quickly snaps awake and stabs the fool in the belly with his spear. After that, Ornest recalls yet another memory he shared with his childhood friend, who died early because of a terminal illness. Although this was way back before he met Alec and the girls, he still remembers losing to this little guy every single day in their mock battles. Back then, each loss got him fired up to keep training, but then one night, when he found out that the guy was dying, he crashed out pretty badly and begged the guy not to leave him like that. Feeling sorry for little Ornest, the guy surrendered all his wins to Ornest. But despite that, Ornest was still very sad that he lost his friend and rival. Having remembered such an important memory, Ornest unlocks a special feature of his legendary spear artifact, one that makes him produce fire at its tip and continues stabbing and burning Gloria in the belly. Around that same time, Melia and the ringleader finally arrive at the entrance door leading to the deepest depths of the 73rd floor and open it. Inside, the ringleader happily climbs up the stairs to the altar situated at the center of the space and steals the dungeon core. However, as he moves on to the next phase of the Shadow Guild's plans, Ornest, who's still fighting Gloria, asks Alec to turn up the heat in the room. Hearing this, Gloria gets a little confused, as he feels Ornest might be trying to make a very bad joke. But when Alec engulfs Ornest's entire body and his spear in a shroud of pure magic fire, he realizes he's cooked, literally. In just a few seconds, Ornest bombards the confused Gloria with a barrage of spear thrusts, until he permanently cuts Gloria's right arm clean off. Then, as Gloria desperately begs Alec to reduce the heat, Ornest receives even more ignition fire magic from Alec and slams the dimwit to the ground. As his life flashes before his eyes, Gloria desperately fights Ornest in a last-minute attempt to save himself, but unfortunately, Ornest is aura farming at the moment, so there is nothing he can do. While the poor guy winces in pain, Ornest himself wastes a few seconds acknowledging Gloria for being strong, and his childhood friend for molding him into his own man. Afterwards, he immediately gets back up, slices more of Gloria's limbs off, and lands the finishing blow that slaughters and rips Gloria's entire body to irreparable shreds. With Gloria done, Ornest does the dramatic hero walk back to his buddy and chats with him for a few more minutes. Meanwhile, Yora wakes up in the deepest depths of the 73rd floor, with Melia and the ringleader, and gets really worried when she finds out that the ringleader's already stolen the dungeon core. As the brainless oaf continues yapping Yora to death, Melia, who's apparently tired of hearing his loud mouth, slashes him in the back and leaves him to die. Soon after, he picks up the dungeon core and starts calling Yora the Seeker, but Yora tells him she's never heard of such a term before. However, rather than explaining to her, Melia tells her about the land where dungeon cores grant wishes, Eden, and asks if she, as the Seeker, can see it. The moment she says no, the ringleader starts swearing that his guild will avenge him. But surprisingly, Melia welcomes whatever battles they'll be facing in the future and finishes him off. Afterwards, he spots Olivia and Krasha approaching the altar where he's on and starts snitching on himself, telling the girls how he plans to make more enemies, so he'll hopefully create someone strong enough to entertain him. When Yora also spots Olivia and Krasha, she warns Melia that Alec and Ornest will soon join them, so he better run. But then Melia assures her that he's more than happy to fight someone like Alec, the son of Arya Egret. Around that same time, Alec leaves Ornest behind after Ornest tells him about Rosie's warnings to stay out of a fight with the Blade Master and rushes into the special room to meet with Olivia, Krasha, and Melia. However, moments before he arrives, Olivia dashes past Melia, rescues Yora, and returns her to their formation. Krasha then fires multiple magic arrows at Melia, but he blocks the entire attack with his robe. Seeing this, Yora then tries binding the Blade Master with a sealing spell, and while the chains restrain him, she enchants Crasha's next arrow shot sevenfold, transforming it into a phoenix arrow. Unfortunately, just seconds after Crasha releases the arrow, Melia effortlessly breaks free from Yora's sealing spell and slices through the magic attack with just his physical blade. Next, Olivia appears behind him to land a sneak attack, but after blocking it, Melia switches to talk no jutsu and expresses his disappointment for not embracing loneliness as he taught her to. Apparently, for years on end, poor Olivia clung to loneliness, just like her dear teacher taught her, and hoped to gain enough power to become the strongest all on her own. However, now that she's seen just how strong the power of friendship makes her, she vows never to go back to being alone. That said, she then continues attacking and condemning Melia for still trying to act like a father figure in her life when he rarely ever knew how badly she felt back then. And although Melia defends against her attacks, he remains silent as he listens to poor Olivia spill her guts and feelings out. Then, once she's done trauma dumping, he slashes her in the chest and slams her into a rock nearby, further injuring her. Seeing this, Crasha then tries shooting one more magic arrow at Melia, but he catches it like a paper plane and gets a little closer to Yora and Crasha to finish them off. Knowing her master, Olivia screams at Crasha and Yora to run as fast as they can, but at that very moment, Melia attacks them with a deadly red air slash from his blade. With very little time to react, Olivia instinctively jumps in front of the girls and gets hit by the entire attack so that they can survive. Seconds after the attack, Crasha finds Olivia lying helplessly as she gasps for air, and desperately does her best to heal her. However, when her healing magic fails, Olivia dedicates the rest of the battle to Alec and passes out. Around that same time, Alec descends from the sky in a mad rage and clashes swords with the scumbag. After Melia pushes him back, Alec tells Crasha to keep healing Olivia, and then he dashes right back at Melia to continue fighting him. Amid their fight, Alec asks Melia why he would betray Olivia like that, given how much she trusted him, but the useless buffoon completely blames her for everything. Enraged, Alec charges at Melia blindly, but after he dodges the attack, Melia tells Alec to fight him with his most powerful magic spells, and Alec immediately summons Vajra, the thunder god. Next, he sends Vajra to attack Melia, but Melia struggles until he is injured and begins bleeding from his forehead before finally slicing through the spell. Upon dispelling the attack, he commends Alec's skill and strength, but still calls him weak because he lacked murderous intent in his magic. After hearing the derogatory comments, Alec gets desperate and decides to use up all the mana in his body, including some of his life force, to invoke the riskiest spell he's ever learned. While he's at it, Yora immediately notices this and tries to stop him from destroying himself, but Crasha tells her it's already too late. After converting all the mana in his body into magic power, Alec invokes an original spell only he can cast, named the Limit Break, and easily surpasses all the limitations of the 5 elemental magics: water, fire, wind, lightning, and earth. Soon, his entire body gets covered in a dense, bright shroud of 5 colors, and he gains the ability to use all 5 elemental magics at once. For his first attack, Alec invokes his 5-element combination offensive spell, the 5-colored release, which is a spell that combines all 5 elemental magics into one devastating attack, and attacks Melia with it, only for him to cut through it. After that, he attacks him with only wind magic. At first, Melia struggles with cutting the wind because of the high-speed wind rotations, but when he eventually does manage to cut it, he gets a chest injury serious enough to make someone like him stagger and bleed. Seeing this, Alec immediately bombards Melia with more high-level wind tornadoes, ultimately trapping Melia in one of them, but eventually, Melia cuts through the spell with his special red twin blades. Following this, he dashes at Alec to close the gap between them, but Alec attacks him with an earth lightning, and although Melia manages to cut through the spells, he loses one of his twin blades in the process. At this, Melia happily discards his broken sword as he realizes Alec's the only person who can give him the battle he wants. To repay Alec for going this far, Melia promises to go all out moving forward, but before that, he calls Alec Eldas's apprentice, and Alec gets a little confused. Curious, he asks Melia if he knows about Eldas's whereabouts, but Melia warns him not to try looking for him. That said, Melia then asks Alec if Eldas ever told him how his mother died. Although Alec was told that his mother died from the plague, Melia assures him that someone as strong as Arya Wygrit would never die from something that stupid. In other words, Alec has been lied to his entire life. Hearing this, Alec gets desperate and screams at Melia to tell him the truth, but Melia ignores him and moves on to the next round of their battle. This time, he takes out the dungeon core he stole from the ringleader earlier, activates the purple miasma powers inside it, and absorbs all of its energy into his sword. In another part of the dungeon, Leviel, Marbel, and Lurg meet up with a wounded Ornest at the battle site, where he defeated Gloria, and Lurg immediately administers healing magic to dress his wounds. Soon after getting healed, Ornest tells Leviel and the others that Alec's already activated Limit Break and is currently using the 5-colored release to fight Melia in the deepest depths of floor 73. Hearing this, Marbel and Leviel start praising Alec for being a magical genius, but Ornest warns that using Limit Break isn't all that beneficial for Alec's body. Judging by the highly demanding nature of the spell, which requires Alec to use up all his internal mana and also harvest mana from the atmosphere, Ornest tells them that he can only hold that spell up for 10 minutes max, or else it'll be bye-bye, Alec. Knowing this, Ornest gets up to get to Alec so we can help him, but along the way, his body gives out again, and Leviel tells him to just calm down. After getting Ornest to rest, Leviel calls in the guild's casketer, an off-brand Lex Luthor from Temu, and has him seal Gloria's remains inside a magic coffin directly linked to the underworld. After that, he overhears Marbel talking about Alec's advantage over Melia, and then lets her know that if Melia has the last floor's dungeon core, which basically holds the most mana in the entire dungeon, then Alec's as good as dead. Around that same time, Melia attacks Alec with his infamous Mana Blast sword attack, which sends deadly purple air slashes toward him. And although Alec tries using his Reflect spell to ricochet Mana Blast back to Melia, his Mana Blast eventually breaks through it. Seeing this, Alec knows he's cooked if he tries using Reflect to block Melia's subsequent Mana Blasts, but luckily, as he tries escaping Melia's other Mana Blast attacks, Yora blocks most of them with her Earth and Ice Wall magic. Soon after, Melia pauses his attacks to catch his breath, but while he's at it, Olivia tells Yora and Krasha that she has a plan. At that point, it's revealed that Alec's been using Limit Break for 5 minutes, which means he doesn't have much time left. However, as he struggles to catch his breath, Melia lunges at Alec and bombards him with several close-range strikes to wear him down. While Alec desperately tries to block the strikes, Yora appears behind him and binds Melia multiple times to buy Alec some time to activate his next spell. Seconds later, Alec unleashes yet another 5-colored release spell, but after Melia cuts through all of them, he increases the power of his attacks by combining Karavnos, a Thunder God spell, Sacrificial Blaze and Thunderbolt, and then directs it all at Melia. Sensing the danger, Melia tries to cut through the whole attack combo with his Mana Blast, but the recoil causes a massive explosion that distorts Alec's vision. Following the explosion, Krasha signals Alec to be ready for what comes next, and almost instantly, Alec draws Schwart, his legendary blade artifact, to continue the battle melee style. The next time Melia tries attacking Alec with his Mana Blast, Krasha activates the Magic Eater spell and restricts both Alec and Melia from using magic. Despite this inconvenient development, Melia and Alec still clash swords as equals for the next few minutes. During another pause in their battle, Melia reminds Alec that he has less than a minute before his Limit Break spell expires. Knowing this, Alec charges at Melia, keeping his center of gravity low, forces an opening in his defense, and lands a low-blow sword slash that not only wounds Melia's face, but also leaves him impressed by how brilliant and efficient Alec is with his attacks. Seeing this, Melia starts trash-talking again, but just as he's about to land the finishing strike on Alec, Olivia pops out of nowhere and slashes his chest. After the successful attack, Olivia then asks Melia why he took her in and made her strong, but Melia promises to tell her when she defeats him. That said, Olivia steals her resolve, ignoring her wounds, and fights Melia at her full strength. When Melia overpowers Olivia, Alec joins the battle with only 10 seconds till his Limit Break is deactivated and unleashes coordinated attacks with Olivia. Soon, his 10-second time limit elapses, but just as Melia is about to finish him off, Krasha undoes the Magic Eater spell, in line with Olivia's plan, and Alec immediately unleashes the Heavenly Thunderbolt on Melia. In that split second, Melia tries to cut through the spell again, but this time, Yora erects a shield to keep Melia's sword trapped behind him. After surviving Thunderbolt, Melia tries using Mana Blast again, but Olivia blocks it yet again and buys Alec just enough time to unleash yet another Thunderbolt attack. As expected, Melia survives the second Thunderbolt spell. However, as he desperately tries to land the finishing strike on Alec, Krasha's arrow pierces through his chest, leaving him vulnerable for the first time in his life. In the aftermath of the attack, Alec passes out, and Melia concedes defeat as he surrenders the final floor's dungeon core to the victors, Olivia and her friends. However, before collecting the core, Yora tells Krasha and Olivia that the Shadow Guild wanted her because they see her as the Chosen One, or Seeker, who's rumored to be the only person who can see Eden. In addition to everything she said, Melia also adds that the dungeon cores have a will of their own, but since listening to their subtle voices is so annoying, Only the select few, like Yora, can decipher and gather enough of them to find the path to Eden. Despite hearing all these, Olivia still refuses to believe that she nearly died in a fairy tale. However, while she crashes out, a half-conscious Alec suddenly wakes up to remind Malia that he has to answer Olivia's questions about the reason he betrayed her, especially now that he's been defeated. So, to hold up his end of the bargain, Malia starts his story by asking Olivia and the others if they know about the dungeon syndrome, which is a certain disease where the dungeon's power turns people into monsters. After Krasia and the others affirm that they know about it, Malia tells them that Olivia's mother contracted the disease many years ago, back when they were much younger swordsmen and women, risking their lives slaying monsters for the adrenaline rush. Over the years, Olivia's mom had Olivia and contracted the disease during one of her dungeon raids with her party. However, as her body morphs into that of a monster's, she begged Malia to end her life before it's too late, and Malia beheaded her as quickly as he could so she wouldn't feel pain. Following that single act, Malia says he felt a bit responsible for her death, so he left the party, took little Olivia in, and taught her how to fight. To continue his story, Malia tells Krasia and the others about a specific memory he shared with little Olivia, back when she nearly called him her father, only to chicken out at the last minute. Apparently, after hearing Olivia call her father, Malia says he started feeling like he was wrong for ending her mom's life just like that. In his search for answers, he found out about Eden, a land where any wish can be granted, and abandoned everything just to try to bring Olivia's mother back. However, to avoid being pitied, Malia ends his story and rage baits Olivia to end his life, so she can take back everything he's taken from her. Unfortunately for him, just as Olivia is about to make her decision, Lorg, Marbel, Leviel, Ornest, and the Casketer dude all show up and reunite with Olivia and the others. After the niceties, Olivia decides to leave Malia in the hands of the justice system, and a devastated Malia swears that the wounds of her past will eat and destroy her. As expected, Olivia sees through his empty threats and speaks some sense into his head to help him understand that his philosophy about embracing loneliness was wrong all along. The moment Malia accepts the fact that he was wrong, he acknowledges her strength for the first time, and Olivia secretly sheds tears of happiness as she says her goodbyes to Malia. Soon after, Leviel and the Casketer show up to trap Malia in the eternal coffin, but before getting to that, they let him say his final words. Upon reminding Alec to find the truth behind his mother's death, Malia signals the Casketer to do the needful, and within the next few seconds, the Casketer traps Malia inside the lament coffin. At this, Olivia and Alec pass out, but thankfully, Krasia quickly heals both of them. Once Olivia's back up, she and Lord discuss the consequences of her selfish actions. After Lord forgives her recklessness, he turns to Alec to thank him for taking down Malia and officially marks the southwestern dungeon cleared. With that settled, Lorg then picks up the dungeon core of the last floor and tosses it to Yora as a thank you for defeating the Blade Master. For some weird reason, the moment Yora catches the core, it suddenly glows bright yellow, but before she can figure out why, she collapses and finds herself in another dimension, facing a bright glowing, golden yellow tree with golden fruits attached to it. While she explores the space, a golden yellow humanoid silhouette appears before her, calls her the Seeker, and tells her that if she wants to enter Eden and eat the golden fruit, then she has to gather more dungeon cores and find her way back there in real time. Having said all that, the silhouette pushes Yorha's consciousness back to her body, and she wakes up in a bright room with Alec sleeping softly beside her. Infatuated by his cuteness, Yorha gets down from her bed, inches closer to him, sweet-talks his subconscious body, and then leans in to give him a sloppy kiss. Unfortunately, before she completes her mission, Ornest and Krasia pop out from different parts of the room and tell Yora that they heard everything she just told Alec. Embarrassed, Yorha screams until Alec wakes up. Then she tells them that she dreamt of Eden, collects the core from Krasia, and holds it to see if it'll glow brightly again. When nothing happens, Yora tells Alec that she wants to gather as many other dungeon cores as she can, so she can get to Eden and stop the rest of the Shadow Guild, and Ornest and the others immediately agree to her plans. Amid their celebration, Alec suddenly confesses that he temporarily can't use magic because of the after effects of the limit break. So to keep him prepared for their next adventure, Yorha takes him to Olivia to practice swordsmanship a few hours later. When Olivia finds out about Alec's disability, she expresses her shock. But then again, when Alec tells her that he's planning to investigate the Shadow Guild next, she advises that Yorha digs into her very awkward and complex family tree to see if she has a brother named Gurin, because according to her investigation, she learned that he's the one who ordered her abduction at the Shadow Guild. Moments later, after training with Olivia, Alec visits Misha and Leviel to ask if any tournaments allow them fight other humans and gather experience. Well, Misha tells them about the martial arts tournaments, the battle festival currently happening in the south, and then adds that it's a tournament where they can fight with other adventurers and knights to make a name for themselves and win a dungeon core. Alec and his buddies travel there the following day. When they arrive at the southern city, the four of them do a huddled cheer and rush towards their next adventure. That brings us to the end of the video. What do you think happens next for Alec and the lasting period? Do you think their next adventure would be as fun as their first? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want more anime recaps like these, watch this video instead.